Hello. In this lecture, we will talk about the user behaviors and the query semantics. First, query semantics come from user behaviors and user perception. They don't come from dictionaries. And it means that every word or every search term, they take their relevance and their meaning from the user's behaviors and user's perception. That's why, despite German and Lithuania are not that much close to each other, thanks to users, they suddenly become actually similar or relevant. And in this case, we will talk about clustering. A search engine can cluster only three things: documents, queries, and users. A search engine's purpose is basically matching queries to topics and entities to the documents, and documents to the users, so that user can reach out to the document via topics, contexts, and the queries. But in this case, sometimes a few complicated things might happen. Here we have three queries and three users. Let's assume that user 1 only searches for the query 1 and query 2. Then we see that user 3 searches for query 3 and the query 2. We see that user 2, that person searches for query 1 and the query 3, but the person doesn't search for the query 2 in this case. So there are a few concepts here that you will need to understand. One is correlative queries, query path, and sequential queries. So basically, query path is which query has been searched after what query. If query 1 has been searched first, then the query 3, it means that query path goes like query 1 and query 3. If the person searches first let's say the query 2, then the query 1, it goes 2 to the 1. The second thing is correlative queries. Which query has been searched together with another? And in this case, we see that actually none of these three queries are being searched together. Only two of them always are being searched together, which means that there is not an absolute correlation between them. Then we see the sequential queries. Sequential query is about actually a kind of search session. Let's say this line here, it represents a search session, and this line here, it represents another search session. In this case, you can see that the query 3 maybe appears in this part, and query 1 appears in this part. If search engine decides that both of these query sessions appear from the same search context or the user state, they don't take this middle ground and they directly assume that these two queries are actually coming from the same search state. That's why they directly relate these two queries to each other. But the thing here is that how we can create a query cluster, because none of these three things are being actually searched at the same time. If you accept that these three users are actually the same user, then you will realize that the same user actually are searching all these three queries at the same time. The real magic happens actually where you put the border, because if you take these two users, then the query paths and the correlations and the sequential queries, they all will be changing. If you take it like this, again, everything will be changing one more time. If you take it like all these three, then it's easier, but this time you can realize that some of the really small websites, small sources, they might lose traffic, or some of the affiliate sources, suddenly their topical coverage might be decreased too. Because if you are targeting these users here, actually their behaviors and their entities that appear inside these queries and the query context, all these things actually will be determining your borders. That's why in our topical maps, usually we try to go broader so that we can always stay safe, even if everything goes wrong. One more thing that you should keep in your mind, I won't talk about the theories that much in the future lectures, is actually semantic distance. In every core algorithm update, the semantic distance between the topics, it changes. That's why in the previous lecture we talk about content and the relevance configuration, and it is an always on process. And that's why in our content briefs, we never leave gap. We cover everything without any kinds of luck. We determine everything, nothing is random, everything is planned, and we cover everything in the best possible detailed and a highly accurate way, so that search engine can't find any chance besides ranking us. Thank you. In the next lecture, we will see topical map of this project.